Actually, let me just check disk space. Wow, almost nothing.
Wow.
Well, 11 gigabytes should be fine. It's not going to be bigger than that.
Yeah.
I'll sort it out afterwards.
Yeah, I find that whenever I'm editing these things together, it just fills up my computer. It's not like I'm doing much editing, but...
Hey, Vayan.
Hello.
Hey.
Hello.
How do?
Perfect timing.
Yes. Seems so.
Yeah.
I see we have a new person.
Indeed.
LEP? Eli P?
Well,
Yeah.
he's new to
AKA.
you.
Oh, yes. Oh, yes. Roderick, in the last session, I did hear that on the YouTubes.
Yeah, actually, Teddy, could you change your Roll20 name to the same format as everyone else? So, Rogarek brackets
Oh,
Bloody
yeah.
Teddy.
Tis handy. Yeah, so, well, he... you were in the session last time, but we never actually met.
Oh, right. I wasn't sure. It did seem like you hadn't met, but you're on the bridge of a ship, aren't you?
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah. Oh, Teddy, it's the other way around. It's your character name.
Fixing it right now.
Then your username.
Yeah.
All right, are we recording and stuff? Are we ready?
Yes.
Can be whenever you want.
Yeah, let's go ahead and get started.
Beep.
Okay.
And are you streaming, Universal?
Streaming, yeah.
Cool. Great. Okie dokie. Well, it was a eventful session last time. Does anyone who's there want to recap what happened?
Well, right. So, we sort of met this guy. What's his name again? It was something... He's this big, giant, huge guy.
Sokolov.
Sokolov, thank you.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah.
One of those.
He was like... He seemed to be like the general or the admiral in charge of this fleet.
Not quite. He was more
No.
the captain of that particular ship.
Oh, right, okay. And it's safe to say he was a pretty badass mofo. We tried some diplomacy, and we got the sense of him.
Negotiations broke down.
They did. Sort of get the sense of him. He was just stalling for time, or he was just like humouring us. So, yeah, bad things happened. I got nearly killed. Let's see, Varix basically punched into his brain and ripped his spine out or something like that.
Tore his
Yeah,
face off
more or
and then
less.
climbed in and punched the spine.
It was metal
That is
as
true.
all hell, yeah. And, yes, also there was some other mysterious person running around on the ship and who took control of it.
Murdering and doppelganging his way to Captain Hood.
Yes.
Indeed, although it was apparently unbeknownst or unannounced to the rest of you as you were fighting.
Yeah.
What happened at the end after you had defeated Zolokov?
Yeah, so the ship started to move, and it seems to be moving in the direction of home, as in...
Indeed.
the place where we stopped.
Why did it start to move?
Because someone or something has started to move it.
Not quite. You
No?
were actually propelled out of the battle by the apparently dying attack of the giant psychic wolf of the graveyard.
Ooh, right.
Really? It's
What's that?
missed
died.
that.
It did a giant face laser at your ship in order to shoot you out of the place, and then it got swarmed by all of the other ships. And as you went flying and tumbling away at great speed, you saw a giant explosion happen at the site of the battle. So
That's
something went down.
Did the explosion encompass the other ships?
It seemed to.
Okay.
Or at least, yeah, certainly very large and seemed to be blasting the entire area. So you didn't well, actually, having said that, let's say Rogarek. Let's have a intellect roll, which is basically going to be kind of Numenera or anything else that might apply, to basically use the kind of sensors and cameras, etc., of the ship to try and observe specifically what happens there. And let's say, so basically the ship is like, as I say, literally been kind of blasted out of the arena, and you are like tumbling and spinning very fast. So it doesn't affect you inside the ship because there's very solid artificial gravity. But out of the windows, you can see the entire world kind of spinning very fast around you as you careen through the atmosphere. So given that, it's going to take some work to kind of try and calibrate and compensate the and stabilize the kind of cameras and sensors. So let's say this is going to be a difficulty 4.
Okay. I think I trained right before the session.
Oh, cool. Yep. And as I say, you can also use your flex skill. You can define that whenever you want.
Yeah, I did like Numenera I showed before the session started.
Oh, cool. Yep.
Neat.
So
Is that
Cool. Okay, so you are able to, or rather, you instruct the crew in the control center around you to, get a stable picture of what is happening, and you manage. They bring up a big kind of view screen. Let's say it gets projected into the kind of central area of the ship, so that the others can see it as well. And what you do, in fact, see is so the giant wolf was kind of already surrounded by a good portion of the ships that were there, and just after it kind of attacks you, or shoots at you, you see it basically get swarmed by these ships, and they kind of cling onto it, and there's about half a dozen or so that basically dogpile onto it, and you see the wolf itself kind of giving you a last look before its body basically kind of erupts with a big surge of kind of energy and light. At the same time, kind of much the same is happening to the ships, and pretty much what you catch in the last glimpse before everything's kind of washed out by the sheer force and kind of energy of the explosion is they all seem to get apparently wiped out in the blast. However, you can see in the background that not all of the ships were committed to that attack. There are still several of them left. They seem to light up with kind of red flashes like alarm sounds. And as you kind of fly off into the distance, and as the scene recedes on the view screen, you can see a whole bunch of little kind of flicks and flickers in the sky, which suddenly resolve into just a whole bunch more ships. Basically, they warp into place in the same area, and you can in fact see that basically several of them kind of turn in towards each other, and a kind of much larger kind of ripple forms in the space between them, and then a much larger ship thumps into place kind of between them just as you leave. Let's see.
Do we still have that little recording device going?
Yes, so that little recordy camera type thing has been like floating up towards the top of the ceiling and recording about half of the battle, and it also captures what is shown on the screen there. Right. Let's have you make another roll, Rogarek, to basically, so you have communications with the rest of the fleet, although it's severely distorted and partially blocked by all of the energy and the speed, etc., that is occurring. But let's have you make another intellect roll to basically try and tap into their messages and see if you can pick up anything of what they're saying to themselves and possibly planning. So let's say that's another difficulty 4.
Okay.
All right, so you hear a great kind of just many different transmissions kind of seeming to overlay each other. You've managed to kind of pick up enough of the communication from, taking over the captain, basically, to control this ship, but the sheer volume of information and all of the kind of jargon and specific, call signs and stuff like that they're putting out is kind of basically opaque to you. Although it does at least get some of it gets captured by the drone thingamajig, but you're not able to immediately pick up anything else of their transmissions. As you go flying away from the battlefield at great speed, you're able to get like basic navigational awareness and control, and kind of eventually more or less stabilize the ship and get it flying back towards home, which is in a westerly direction.
Would the rest of us sort of, wherever we are at the minute, would we be thinking, we need to get control of the ship? We need to
I assume at this point, Rogarek, that you would kind of announce your presence.
No, I'd like to stay hidden for as long as possible.
Okay.
Are there any actually those other alien dudes, the cyberdisk and so on, in the room with us? And are they just leaving us to it now that their big bads, the captain's gone?
Yeah, pretty much. They're in. So there are some survivors. It's possible that there are more in the other version of. In fact, let's say, if you go back through the passage and go back into the other version of the room, there is some of them still, alive. Basically, they're in all in some disarray, and they seem to have basically. Stopped what they're doing, stopped attacking you. They're not kind of shut down. They're trying to return to their kind of controls and try and fulfill the functions of the ship to try and get it back in order. But yes, they do not. They seem to basically more or less be ignoring you in the absence of any other commands. Although Rogarek, if you want, you can issue commands to them.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. It seems that the logic.
No, sorry, carry on.
It just seems that the logical explanation for what's happened here is that Varex killed the captain and so became the captain, which is why they don't want to hurt us anymore. I'm sure that makes sense in some way. Yeah.
I think they don't know he killed the captain.
Wow. I don't know, he stopped attacking us.
Sorry, slightly confused with the terms here. So actually, the way we described it, the kind of captain, as it were, of the ship is the kind of big blue guy up in the control room who's now been taken over by Rogarek.
Oh, right.
Zolokoth, I don't know, let's call him the commander of the ship.
Okay, sorry. Commander. Is commander below a captain? I can never tell. It's not
commander would be above, and the captain is the guy, is the one who kind of is in charge of the ship itself in terms of piloting and stuff. And the commander in this case would be the person in charge. But it's all semantics. Like Zolokoth was kind of senior to the captain, but not in overall control of the fleet.
No, he's the captain of being dead.
Well, either way, I think it makes sense for us to go up to the bridge because there's not much we can do down here.
Yeah, actually, having said that, you now have access to the lift that goes up into the control center. So if you wanted, you could just go up there, see that still the aliens are not being aggressive and attacking you. And the captain seems to be flying you now. So the ship has kind of stopped spinning. It's been stabilized, but it is flying at great speed over the landscape towards the west.
That's an idea. Can I look out the giant hull of his ship, and are we anywhere that we'd recognise at this point?
So you can already see out of the kind of windows, as it were, which is the eyes of the face mask thing that's set into the floor. So you can see, that you are travelling across the landscape, not particularly high altitude, but at very great speed. At first, you don't recognize anything in particular because you are a long way from home, but it's not long before you're starting to see features and things that you at least would recognize from maps and identify the fact that you are heading home. So I don't want to kind of get too much into the interactions of the ship because you're kind of pretty much done with control of it. I'm going to slightly railroad you and say you basically head home. So Rogarek, although it's not known to the rest of the crew if he still isn't identifying himself. But he was sent by the Akebe Corporation, and he flies you guys back, not to the city which you came from, which is called Weshrath, which is kind of in the, like, roughly in the middle of the land. He instead flies you to what, well, it's not exactly a capital, because the safe reaches are a kind of federation and network of kind of smaller fiefdoms and stuff like that. But this is certainly the biggest city in the safe reaches, and it's kind of the closest, you might say, to its capital. And in particular, it is where the greatest cathedral of the church and kind of their essentially headquarters resides. The city is called Greatest Grandkirk.
Brilliant.
The Akebe Corporation, is that the same one that we started working for so many sessions ago?
I think so,
Exactly, yes.
Okay.
So having seen that you got blasted off into the far out of civilization and were essentially lost, they have been making steps to try and track you down and find your location. And it seems they're able to do that and send a agent to come and help you and retrieve you. So one way or another, the ship eventually makes a somewhat rough landing near to the city, and you are met by a kind of rescue party or kind of reception party or whatever of from the company. So it's several kind of adventurers along with a big caravan of kind of carts and medical personnel, etc. So you emerge. So let's say Rogart kind of opens the door, the face basically, and you're able to emerge blinking into the sunlight as you return home. And you get kind of first aid and immediate supplies, everything like that. Do you do anything in particular when this happens?
For now, it's just like recovering. I'm just too hurt to think of much.
Yeah, so Nai got sorry, just okay, so I didn't catch your health bars before, but just to check, was it that all of your bars were almost depleted?
Not really.
Or was it just the might one?
No, I was
I was literally 3 speed points away from death.
Okay, yes, so the other ones were depleted. So yeah, in that case, you were indeed very close to death. You're basically unconscious, but you were tended to and saved from the brink of death by your friends during the flight over. And then as the door opens, probably Barracks is holding you in his arms and rushes you out to the nearest kind of doctor, and they take care of you and manage to stabilize you.
Cool.
So all that happens, and the rest, so you're being taken back into the city basically, and taken to a kind of well-appointed room, with the intent of just taking basic care of you and tending to your immediate wounds, etc. The warden is there, and let's see, I have a Pikachu, if this shows up. So she looks something like that, and she greets you with something like, "I took you long enough, eh?" And as the giant ship that you have captured kind of smokes and creaks in the background as you are brought into the city and allowed a brief period to kind of rest yourselves up. The doctors kind of give you various healing balms and whatnot to get you back in action, because it's apparent that the recent events that you have been involved in have caused a great commotion and alarm. They're certainly aware of what has happened. Presumably Roderick has been kind of making his reports and also returned the recording drone to them. So they're able to get a basic idea of what has happened. And as soon as you are, basically recovered enough to kind of walk and talk and so forth, you are met by an envoy from the church, who wish to basically, kind of debrief you for a start and consult with you and meet with you. So let's see. So this should start as a black screen for you.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it looks black.
So give me a second. Oops. So this is how Greatest Grandkirk looks from the ground. It's a kind of large city. It's in a relatively kind of, you might say, medieval style. It's not a big, doesn't have skyscrapers or glass or anything like that, like the city next to the insects did. And as you can see in the middle, there is a very large kind of grand structure, which is essentially the cathedral and headquarters of the church. As you get, let's say there's a couple of kind of fairly ornate kind of open carriages that drawn by big, strange kind of cargo beasts that run you at great speed through the capital. But as you pass, you can actually see there's a fair amount of the citizens of the city who are actually turned out in the streets, and they're actually kind of whooping and yelling at you as you go past, and some of them are even kind of waving signs or throwing confetti and stuff like that, as whatever they've been told, they seem to be kind of aware of who you are and that you have returned to the city after a great trial, and to have achieved basically to have intercepted a incoming threat. So your names seem to be known in the city.
Oh, wow, we're famous.
Yes, but
Nye as an inveterate show-off is like...
nice. So you're kind of grandstanding from
pretty
the
much,
from the wagon. Yeah, they don't stop to let you grandstand with the civilians. But yeah, kind of throughout most of the route of the city, there's people who are turning out and kind of giving you love. As you get, and they also throw in some things like bunches of flowers and things. And I don't know, little trinkets and signs of their well wishes.
Nice sniff flowers.
Do they
Let's
throw
say
in
there's
drugs?
a few complimentary packets of tasty drugs and stuff in there as well.
They know me so well.
So you get taken at great speed through the city. You come towards the center and you see a scene similar to this. So this is as you're approaching the Grand Cathedral. It's kind of towering up into the sky above you, and you get there's kind of a like something between a large moat and the kind of lake that is surrounding it. So the access to it is restricted by bridges, and you go thundering across one of them and into the space beyond, which is a place where, as the kind of central and perhaps most kind of sacred in some ways kind of repository and stronghold of the church, access to most citizens is restricted, and even people relatively high up in the company, for example, and even some members of the church for that matter, would not necessarily be allowed access to this particular place. But you are being taken in there. The warden is with you, by the way, and is just kind of catching up and keeping your spirits up and that kind of thing. As you alight in the kind of, I guess, grand gatehouse of the cathedral, you get greeted by more, attendants, I guess, of the church, who kind of greet you with honor and invite you to enter and to meet the the Council of the Grand Hierarchs of the Church. So you get taken inside. It is a a very impressive sight inside. It's probably the most kind of advanced and technologically sophisticated kind of building or facility in the Safe Reaches. There's kind of huge atriums and corridors and hallways and accretions of kind of machinery and things, most of which their intent is not immediately apparent. But the overall kind of feel of the place is like the grandest library imaginable, as there is all kinds of stores of kind of books and documents and screens with access to huge databanks, collections of technology and kind of ciphers and artifacts and all that kind of thing. Part of the building that you pass through looks something like this.
Wow.
So you're being kind of escorted through these grand passageways by this retinue of church members. How are you kind of reacting to all of this? Certainly having seen places like the home of the insects in the city nearby and various other places, it's, you have by now seen places somewhat comparable in grandeur to this, but certainly it's still the kind of thing that from your life in the Safe Reaches you would never have had access to before.
Well, I guess as we go into this part of the building, the inside, I'm looking up and just like, wow, this is going to be so much fun to climb.
And the warden says, steady on, rein in your ambitions a little bit, given your state. And besides, we have more important business to attend to at the moment. Your adventures across the lands have raised quite a stir. We have heard in particular of your involvement in the insect war, which is something the church actually had an interest in anyway. We are rather impressed by the way that you resolved that particular situation.
Oh, thank goodness, that's what they were paying attention to.
Oh, it was nothing.
I'm surprised that you were following us that far. I didn't think you could. I thought we'd gone out truly
Yeah.
into the unknown.
Carousel Bink has his ways.
Yeah.
That
Well,
carousel link.
we have our ways of collecting information. You were off our radar for quite a long time. We actually thought we had lost you, or perhaps that you weren't going to survive the crash of that spaceship that you requisitioned so spectacularly. But eventually we were able
suddenly
to
just stops sort of showing off and gets quiet for a time.
Would that be the first spaceship or the second spaceship?
as in
first
what
one. Oh,
what you called
gosh, yeah.
Mother Mountain,
Yeah.
which you made an exit with.
Lower lip starts to wobble.
Eventually, yeah. Eventually, we were able to find the the happenstance of what happened over there, and quite a lucky landing you had that managed to get you involved in the happenings over on the other side of the world, and eventually get you the means to come back here, which is quite fortuitous. Because most importantly of all, of course, you happened upon the incursion of what we call the remains of the grand raiding fleets of a certain civilization who have caused us a lot of trouble in the past. In fact, they're more or less responsible for the state of the world as you see it now. Sorry to be bombarding you with so much information, guys, but there is a lot that you have to be caught up on if you're going to help us deal with this situation. You see, the fleet that has been summoned into our world now is one that we thought we had seen the back of for a long time, since we thought we had the remnants of them captured in the graveyard that you saw and safely ensconced there for all eternity. But it turns out that a certain rogue element was able to escape from there and upset that particular balance. So now we have that to deal with, which is it's a good way to liven up events, I suppose. It was getting a little bit boring with without a major war for the last, I think it's been about 700 years. So this is going to be rather exciting. Is there, let's see, so she's just kind of chatting about that as you get drawn further into the building. Is there any particular questions that you ask immediately before you come before the council?
Bayan is purposely He's going to make a point of not asking any questions and avoiding eye contact when he mentioned that. Oh yeah, things got really bad after the graveyard that we safely locked away prisoners in.
Why? why weren't they? Why weren't these sort of dangerous individuals just killed rather than imprisoned for all eternity? I mean, if anything, that just seems needlessly cruel.
Well, that is not actually a situation that was brought about by us as such. It was the result of the conflict between the raiding fleet and let's call them a collective of visitants who happened to be in the on planet at that time. They had had previous dealings with these raiders who had truly marauded right the way across the galaxy, sowing destruction wherever they went. And it is as a result of, you may say, moral debts rung up during that period that they were subjected to that treatment. Although we were essentially given over control of that place, it was on the proviso that we not interfere with the situation there, and instead simply merely accept the fact that it had supposedly, we thought, brought a resolution to that situation.
Okay. I see.
So as you're being kind of escorted down these passageways, you start to hear. Let's see. Hold on. I have a picture missing here. Oh yeah. Okay. So you start. So as you know, inside this building, there is all around you a kind of great hum and whir and kind of thump and clunk and clank of machinery and technology and all that kind of thing. And the air has a rather kind of metallic, kind of ozone-y kind of feel to it and scent to it. But as you start to approach what seems like it must be roughly the center of the building, you start to see more in the way of kind of plants and greenery and wildlife. First, just in the form of kind of planters and trees and things that are kind of set around the place by way of decoration. But you start to pass through areas that are kind of like indoor groves and things like that, and just little indoor kind of parks and things. And the air starts to take on a more natural feeling, and you can almost hear the kind of sigh and whoosh of wind, and even a strange warbling kind of bird song. And you eventually get brought into a large kind of antechamber or atrium, I guess you might say. It's kind of rough. I don't have a map handy, but it's kind of roughly circular. It's high ceilinged, made of kind of very smooth stone, somewhat like actually not quite like marble, but more like very well worked granite. And there are several large entrances or doors kind of laid in a regular pattern around there. They seem each to lead into a different kind of space, and they seem to be large spaces. Many of them are actually outdoors or open, or there's a couple that seem to open into the large causeway of a city. But all the spaces seem like they should overlap with each other. In other words, it seems like these doors are more like portals into various other spaces rather than just plain old entrances.
Those sound fun.
Yes, in the central one, which you can see just through the background of it, seems to lead into one of these rather natural kind of areas. There is a large or a tall and rather graceful, when I say tall, I mean twice or more the size of a normal person, figure who is kind of awaiting you, flanked by a couple of I don't know, advisors or just kind of others who are all rather ornately dressed, and they are surrounded by a cadre of guards. The scene looks like this. And let's see. So the figure in the, let's say the kind of lady in the middle, who looks rather graceful and noble, and to those of you sensitive to such things, radiating a rather considerable amount of kind of latent power. She has her arms kind of folded over her waist, and as you approach the room, she kind of spreads her arms out and says, "Welcome to you who have come so far and done so much. We have much to discuss. Please follow us." And she turns and steps into that space, followed by the others at her side, and indeed the great beast who is also at her side. So you are kind of invited to follow her through. Let me just... I'm missing one of these pictures.
How big is that beast? Looks like it's hard to
kind of
judge perspective.
Yeah, it's roughly as tall as a person at the withers.
Okay.
Wow.
Is it wearing a monocle?
Looks like it's wearing a monocle.
And
Let's
it has
say-
a mohawk. So
Let's say it is. I think that's a marking in the picture, but yeah, let's say it's wearing a monocle.
Let's call it Mocat.
And
Can I reach behind and scratch it behind the ears?
as you
That
do that, it
seems
turns its head towards you and it says, "Oi, lay off! But nice work out there."
Oh well.
Sorry, you're just so cute.
Yeah, I get that a lot. All right, sorry, just trying to set
Loving a
everything here.
monocle.
Oh well, I'm getting on in age a little, you see. So
So
as
stylish. Suits you. Oh, sorry, I'm getting sidetracked. Just
So as you get escorted along with these people through the doorway, it leads, indeed, as you suspected, into an area that is clearly not actually inside the cathedral. It is a large, open, kind of somewhat forested area. It's actually, there doesn't seem to be anything here in the way of like buildings or civilization or anything like that. It's just kind of purely natural, although you do see, again, some rather ornately dressed and important seeming people kind of scattered around the place as you get escorted through into a large clearing or kind of opening with a what is this? Like half a dozen, like 6 to 8 people, I think. I'll count them in a second. Again, very important looking, and they are sat around on a large. There's kind of a what's the word? Kind of an amphitheater. Like shape of kind of roots basically and plant life that is kind of the roots and things are large enough that they provide a lot of kind of seating basically, like places where you can sit and be kind of surrounded by leaves and grass and things.
Like a forum
However, sorry, say again?
sort of like a small forum.
Yeah. Forum is a good word for it. However, something unusual about it is that the banks, as it were, of this kind of forum go around and form the shoulders and then the neck and indeed the head of a large being who looks like, hopefully, yes, looks like this.
Oh, wow.
So
Okay, so you say the people are sitting on his shoulders, or are you
yeah,
meant
kind
to
of on
big
the
shoulders?
yeah. So the you can see kind of there's kind of the shoulders or the beginnings of the arms of this great being are kind of stretched out. Imagine them, I guess, maybe slightly larger than they're kind of shown there, and seated on or stood on around there, you know, to varying extents based on their forms, are these important looking people who the warden says that's the Grand Council, and they are of various forms, and they look like these are going to be below the other pictures. They look like this.
Cool.
Do
Oh,
you
everything just got very shonen.
I love that first one. I just love it.
We just got a whole bunch of badasses.
It's so awesome.
do you recognize any of those people?
Oh, the guy at the end.
Yes, Magic Brian.
Yes, you do indeed recognize. Hold on, let me
Magic Brian.
see,
Oh, is this
see if I can.
Adventure Zone?
No, it's
Not that different Magic Brian. Okay.
Our Magic Brian.
so his name is Jaina who
Oh, yeah.
Doitsu, and he says, it is fantastic to see you all again. I'm so overjoyed. But
Gina!
I do love that first one, though. That's brilliant.
yes,
It's so amazing.
so that guy is sat kind of near the hold on, let me get my thingamajig. So the oops, nope. Hold on 2 seconds. I just need to put these pictures in the background. And okay, right. So the guy on the left is kind of sat placidly near, let's say, the kind of left shoulder of the what to call her? So the big head that is overlooking all of this. Let's call her the Pope. The warden
Is
nudges.
this like the Amber Pope? Is that it in Numenera?
Perhaps so. The
Rings a
warden
bell.
just nudges you in the ribs and points and says, "That's the Pope. Don't be rude." And but the
I would
Pope
never.
is
You're very polite people.
the Pope slowly opens her eyes, which are they have a kind of they're kind of golden colored, but they have a remarkable kind of depth to them, as if you're almost looking into a kind of golden galaxy of stars. And she simply gives a beneficent smile, and her posture is already one of kind of welcoming and respect, I guess. But she doesn't so far say anything. The
I say,
bird.
whoa, cool eyes.
She smiles almost imperceptibly more. The bird guy is kind of, let's say, kind of perched placidly, let's say in kind of the lotus position on her left shoulder, and it raises a hand as the bird inside it kind of tweets and bobs around, and the sound is kind of repeated but greatly amplified and let's see, not quite distorted, but it's kind of put in chorus and resonance, and it kind of goes whoom. The guy in the middle with the kind of books and things does indeed have kind of books and things kind of floating around him, and in fact many they kind of spin and whirl around him almost like what am I thinking of? I don't know, maybe like a kind of tape machine or something, or like a hard drive or something like that, in the sense that they kind of spin around to present one book in front of his face, which he kind of reads things off of. Ooh, we got a barracks. And hey.
Snake Man.
Nick.
Hello?
Hello.
Somewhere.
Do we have a barracks?
We do.
Ah, I think we do.
Next.
Hooray!
Very nice.
So, a lot has happened since you've been gone.
So much.
I leave you alone for like 1 second.
I mean, just
alright.
zoom out and you'll get a little idea of what's going on. I mean, you won't, but
So broadly speaking, kind of going from top left to right, basically, just to quickly sum up, so you got blasted out of the battlefield by the Psychic Wolf, who was then apparently destroyed in a suicide attack by the rest of the ships. However, more of the fleet was appearing and warping in the sky behind you. The ship, which was taken over by Rogorek, was flown all the way back into the safe reaches and to the kind of effectively, as it were, the capital of the place, called Greatest Grankirk, where there is a large cathedral of the church, which you can see in the top left-hand picture. You got escorted, after being allowed to rest up and so forth, and Nai being healed up. You got escorted towards the cathedral. So you're kind of greeted by the company of pioneers and the church who have become aware of what befell you. You got escorted into the cathedral and through it, as seen by the kind of third picture from the right, and then greeted by the Grand Council of, I can't quite remember what I called them, but let's just call them the Grand Council, which is essentially the highest authority of the church, as represented by the tall blue lady. She brought you into the place. into a place which looks rather like this. And it is essentially the meeting space of the council overseen by the Pope, who is the big plant lady.
Plant Pope.
Indeed, Plant Pope. And the rest of the council look as in the pictures in the bottom. And I was just in the middle of describing them. But one of them is Jaina Hudoxiu, who is the illusorily disguised representative of the insects who you met earlier in your adventure. And he is the one who talks like this. So he has greeted you as I'm describing the guy in the middle, has a great deal of books at his disposal, which he's almost constantly kind of looking through, and they're kind of flying out of his capey roby thing for him to access more information. And he raises his hand and hold on just a second. Yep.
I was about to ask, does he have arms or hands?
Let's see. If he does, they are apparently hidden beneath his cloak. And he says,
Greetings to you.
And various of the other council members, make their greetings and give a little formality and so forth.
I wave to all of them.
So you're basically ushered into the kind of central clearing. There are, let's say not seats, but let's say kind of big mounds of kind of roots and stuff that form themselves into comfortable seat-like shapes, kind of rise up from the middle of the place. So you are invited to sit there.
Long
sorry,
shot.
yeah?
Is there
Go
something
ahead.
we're supposed to recognise about number 6?
1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6.
I
I
guess not.
don't think so. No, I think it's.
They look similar to I can't remember Nye's clone, the Iron Man armor she was wearing.
No, I wouldn't say that, but they are. I think from. It's in a similar style actually to the one of the people that you met during your trials set by the insects. When you were meeting the Portalmancer guy, you met someone who looked like that. But anyway,
5 reminds me of Urumov slightly, even though he looks nothing like Urumov. I'm not sure why.
He does have a shifty look about him. And but nonetheless, these are indeed the kind of highest authorities apparently in the church, and they basically, after the kind of greetings and formalities and so forth are taken over, they go through. They seem to have some information. The basics basically of kind of what you've gone through, and it seems like Jaina in particular has filled them in on the events, of your kind of crash and you leaving afterwards. So they're kind of roughly familiar with that, but they ask you to share your, any information you have about what you've seen in relation to the kind of graveyard and the invasion fleet and the temple and all that kind of stuff. So that takes quite a while. During that, you are kind of brought refreshments and generally made comfortable. Let's see. Do any of you have any particular questions for the council during or after that?
I would like to ask our friend whose name I keep on forgetting, Magic Brian.
Jaina.
How's Bob doing?
Yes, your friend who stayed with us has become remarkably successful in managing the lovely meeting place which he set up in that central location. And in fact, he has become well known and well loved in the city and is treated very well.
Oh, they grow up so fast.
A small tear runs from his eye.
He says that he misses you a great deal.
I pat you on the shoulder.
I will always remember Bob.
However, thanks to your actions, the peace brokered between the two factions has held remarkably well, and it seems that we are in for a nice period of peace and cooperation and increasing of civilization, which is always a good thing, I think. So he fills you in on that. Any other particular questions? Bear in mind the let's say the the upper reaches, the kind of higher authority of the church has always been basically kind of opaque to you, and indeed even the I guess the full nature of kind of what it does, what it's responsible for, what it knows, all that kind of thing, has never been entirely clear. Just to remind you, the kind of general policy is that the priests will share theoretically all of the information they have, but in practice that tends to be not exactly censored, but let's say edited and put into a form that is most suitable and useful for the actual needs of the people in this world. So most of the high level information is usually not really said directly as such, but it's become clear through your tour of this cathedral, and the warden presumably would have kind of filled you in as well. It becomes clear that they have access to a even huger store of information than you were familiar with before. And from the way they talk about things like how the graveyard was set up and stuff, it's clear they have knowledge going far back into history in a way that is mostly absent from the somewhat ahistorical society that is in the greater world outside, because it's the prospect of trying to understand everything that made the world the way it is simply too overwhelming for most people and communities, and all they need is the information to try and survive amongst all of these artifacts and ciphers and things, and to be able to make a living. So given that, and given that you now have access to a basically all of the knowledge that the church has, essentially, is there anything in that realm that your characters might be particularly curious about or want to try and clarify?
Where these aliens come from, if they have a home.
Okay, so asking about the do you mean the raiding fleet?
Yeah.
Okay, so they fill you in on more of the history of that. Basically, Jaina says, now try not to be too alarmed as I unveil some of the greater context in which we are living. But you may not be aware of this, but we are far from the first civilization, or even the era of civilizations to grace this planet. As you are well aware, there are many artifacts and ruins and leavings of the previous civilizations. And in fact, there were 9 epochs of civilization that have come and go on this planet in the past. Therefore, the world that we live in is referred to as the 9th world. One of these previous epochs that existed on this plane enabled the use of transgalactic travel and communication and trade, and civilization flourished as this planet became part of the greater community of aliens that inhabit space. And all of the stars that you can see in the sky, many of them are or have been occupied by civilizations just as sophisticated as our own, if not more so. In the course of these explorations, which lasted for, if you can believe this, many, many millions of years, in the course of this, we came across a certain faction of naughty renegades who had a habit of completely disregarding the general principles of peace and cooperation, and decided that they would take advantage of the lowered defensive stance that was endemic and start to pick off and attack planets wherever they could and take whatever resources they wished. It seemed almost as if they did it not entirely for the spoils, but simply for the enjoyment of it. Whoever in the galaxy was of a sick disposition generally was exiled from their own planets, but the problem is they piled up, and they formed these raiding crews, and it was a great trouble. They eventually made their way to this planet, at which, however, because of the particular wealth of history and archaeology on this planet, the faction that I mentioned before of visitants, called the Enoch, were able to defeat and contain almost the entire bulk of this fleet and banish them, using a means by which they were not supposed to be able to find us or anywhere else again. However, it seems that the temple which you came across served as a beacon that or was able to be repurposed as such a powerful beacon that it was able to be located by the remnants of the fleet, who still retain, compared to the technology available on the surface of this planet at this time, considerable threat.
Just as a side note, Nye stops sitting and looks for something to climb onto. More out of comfort than anything else. Because
Yeah,
she's
let's,
like, a couple of months ago, she thought the entire world was a single mountain. And this is a lot. This is a lot of information.
Yeah, so let's say that as you start looking around for that, there's several kind of trees nearby, and as you start looking at a particularly tall and tempting one, the Pope seems to sense your intent, and the seat-like ensconcement that you're sat upon actually just literally erupts up out of the ground, and quickly forms itself into a very pleasingly tall and complex and climbable tree.
Shimmy up it right away, and then I look over and say, "Thank you."
She turns her eyes on you, and it is quite the experience. As you catch her eyes, it is almost as if the entire space around you briefly kind of ripples with a sense of scale and kind of golden sparkliness, basically, I guess, maybe is all that Nye really experiences of it. But it is very pleasant, and she again ever so slightly increases her smile at you. And anyway, so now that Jaina has explained the situation, let's see. I'm not going to go into the full dialogue for all of them, but basically the council start to kind of talk amongst themselves and with you, and some of them kind of explain further details about the raider fleet. So let's see. They explain that they've taken whatever technology they can, basically, from the raids, from the worlds that they raided, and they had a particular tendency or penchant to basically raid old war technology that has been kept around, mostly for historical or research purposes, that was kind of supposed to be decommissioned, and they brought it back to life, despite that being under considerable lock and key by the kind of greater galactic community, you might say, whoever was custodians of those particular pieces. And also it being, let's see, they struggle somewhat to explain exactly the concept they mean, but essentially it is something along the lines of a sin. This refers to an act which is acknowledged to be harmful and unconscionable by consensus of the Council of Planets, who were in control of such things at the time. So actions which are simply beyond the pale. As a result of that, these planets had to kind of re-rouse their kind of military capability, such as it was, to try and fight them off. However, because they consistently underestimated the threat, the viciousness and aggression and greed of these raiders, they kept losing battles basically, and each time they did, they would lose more powerful technology to the raiders, and that is how they came to present such a threat. The ships that like the one that you flew here, are particularly powerful, and essentially because they have warp capability, and because even though actually another aspect that makes them so powerful is they actually they managed to they managed to implement warp technology in such a way that it basically breaks the rules, and they're able to essentially kind of clone ships or almost anything else by warping it, and doing that in such a way that the original version is not destroyed. And as a result, they whenever they were able to get hold of a great power source such as a sun, they would multiply greatly, and as a result they have access to large numbers of ships, which is why the amount of them that you destroyed in that battle is not nearly enough to cripple their ability to invade.
So should we assume there's actually a lot more beings like Zolokov on ships?
Indeed. Yeah, they basically tell you Zolokov in particular was a... Actually, no, let's see. Yeah, so they say Zolokov is an ancient and very powerful being, or was an ancient and very powerful being with a huge litany of crimes that he has committed in the past. But nonetheless, he is merely one of such beings among a great number of them who have taken up residence in the fleet, basically. They also say there is essentially not really one central command structure. It's more of a, you might almost say, like a clan system. So there are several strong leaders who kind of vie for a kind of balance of power that sometimes breaks and results in a kind of inter-fleet conflict, during so somewhat like, I don't know, mafia-like, I guess you might say, where various kind of factions will be taken out and replaced by others, and there's various shifting like that. However, they all have they share information with each other, and they tend to come to a common agreement on what to do. And however, they review, what you tell them about your experiences in the ship and what you're able to pick up from the drone and things like that. And they're able to discern that it appears Zolokov, before he died, had essentially sent a recommendation to be propagated throughout the fleet, that this planet was now, well, firstly, just that he had located it, and secondly, that he considers it rich in resources and low in defenses, and it is likely that will trigger a greater invasion in order to basically scour this place for all of the ancient technology that they can find.
Okay. Is there a plan?
Seem to fear Stason Jatham.
Yeah.
So...
we met this legendary hero, Stason Jatham. I don't know if you know him.
Let's see. Actually, I think Jaina would have met Stason, actually.
Right.
So,
yes, Stason. How is he doing, by the way?
There's a question.
Wait, you mean he's not with you anymore?
Didn't he say he would return?
He disappeared, didn't he? We crashed into the ship, and then he just disappeared. Maybe
yes,
he flew off from one of the little aliens.
He is indeed no longer with you. It's unclear exactly at what point during the battle he left, but it's possible... I don't know. Yeah, I mean, he clearly left at some point. Maybe he was
He works in mysterious
tempted
ways.
out in some way by the giant illusionary Jason Statham that was projected outside.
It's beautiful.
Anyway, Jonas seems rather taken aback, and he kind of mops his brow, and he says, this that is rather unfortunate. We were hoping that we would be able to rely on his legendary powers and certain set of skills. Oh well." And
Could we perhaps create some sort of clone of Stace and Japham to help fight the alien threat?
Maybe
I
we need to
if
go and
they've got
get.
these-
That's a dangerous game.
Well,
Maybe-
if you've got the ability to, if they've got the ability to clone and create their own ships and creatures, why can't we do the same with Stace and Japham? We can send an army of Stasons out.
Well,
Can-
funny
can-
you
What if
should
they
say.
rebound?
Can we find Neon Leeson?
Then we're all doomed.
Funny you should bring that up. That was actually attempted at a long point in the past when, well, I'm sure you are aware, he was mostly active several hundred years ago. And during that time, somebody did attempt to clone him. It did not go so well. He prefers to be the original. So we don't do that anymore, and we do not suggest it to him either. Well, hopefully he will turn up again, because otherwise we are kind of boned.
So if you're gonna clone anyone, it should be Sharnold Schwarzenegger.
Oh, don't speak that name.
and
Arch nemesis of
Sylvester Stallone. But anyway,
And I'm not even going to try one for Jean-Claude Van Damme.
Lolf Dungren.
Nice. All right. So anyway, he says, but nevertheless, no, we are not without options. Although we are going to have to put on our thinking caps in order to come up with some kind of force or method that is going to be powerful enough to repel this fleet. We feel that most likely they will come to us because, this is the origin of the first beings that they encountered, namely ourselves, and also because we keep considerable amounts of technology here, which probably we can't really avoid them detecting, so probably they're going to come this way. But there are various means that we could undertake, hopefully, to put forth some kind of a robust defense, and for that I refer to my colleague, and he looks over at the let's see.
Jaina
let's-
opens a portal and taps Jaina on the shoulder from behind through the portal.
Woo!
Can you do this?
You cheeky boy!
I saw your portals. Can you do this?
Well,
The
oh
space
my!
in their ships.
What is this?
Tangled space. It is like a knot pulled tight, but space is thin, and it tears.
Your friend is quite scary, isn't he?
Make this in their face heads. I don't like it.
Well, my creepy friend, that is a apt and useful suggestion. We have seen during the course of your own battles that your warp capabilities are rather powerful, especially when put into the brain. But however, I must emphasize that the force of the fleet that will be coming to us will be considerably difficult to use such means on, because in force and when combined in numbers, they are able to exert protections against the warping of space, because you see, the ships themselves are, you might consider them constructed wormholes, which are under the power and control of the ships and the aliens controlling them. In fact, as I recall, you yourself were subjected to a reversal of one of your warps, which could have been rather dangerous.
Is there anything more about them we can learn from the ship that we took?
Yes, the green-hatted, cyborgy-looking lady pipes up and says, Yes, the technology that you brought back is rather interesting, and we are reviewing it and analyzing it as we speak. And she raises her, let's say, kind of cyborg robot hand, and it kind of unfolds and projects a kind of like a holographic display, basically, which shows the kind of like a model of the ship that then kind of gets exploded, you might say. All the parts get kind of taken apart and they start spinning around. And she says, we are taking quite a lot of useful information from the data banks, but it'll take a little more time before we can get anything useful from them. The guy with the books at this point pipes up. He actually kind of levitates slightly from the branches and things and kind of floats forward towards you somewhat. And he says, actually, wait, let's see. Yes, actually, I'm not going to do a voice. But he basically describes, actually, let's say he talks not by speaking, but by spinning around his kind of books and so forth very quickly and in a certain configuration, and basically projecting certain words out of the books kind of rapidly and in order that he can spell out text and sentences and things, and he communicates in that way. And he says, we have a catalog of assets that may be able to help us repel this invasion. We're not entirely sure how effective each of them will be, but one thing they share in common is that they are currently not actively under our control. And let's see. So the guy to the left of Jaina, so the one from the right, waves a hand, and around the area that you're kind of sat in, a larger display, which is basically a map of at least the western part of the continent, so kind of the safe reaches and the outlands, which are kind of the area surrounding them, although not so far past. Basically, it extends about as far as the what are they called, the Iron Wastes, which are the kind of border in the east, beyond which at least you are not familiar with anyone having come back from. But anyway, it's basically the whole of the safe reaches kind of area, and some beacons are kind of marked on that map, showing certain locations scattered around the place. There are 2, 3, 4, 5, 5 of them. Some of them, let's say a couple of them, are kind of within the safe reaches. A couple of them are kind of in the outlands, kind of one north, one south, and then there's one further out to the east, more in the region that you were kind of exploring before. And he says each of these would be useful in the coming battle. However, we need to take steps in order to reclaim, take control of, or activate them. At this point, the warden steps forth and says, as it so happens, having reviewed your prowess in the recent months following your departure from these particular realms, we in the Akebe company, who, as you may know, are to some extent a subsidiary of the church and form part of their arm and their hand in the world, those of us who decide such things have universally come to the conclusion that you have easily qualified yourselves as wardens in your own right of the Akebe company. And it is... she quickly produces some contracts which say you will be compensated and given the status accordingly, which is considerable, but however, you will not have much time to enjoy it, because it is fortuitous that we have found such a worthy band of wardens, because we are going to call on you to travel out to these locations and take whatever means you can to bring these resources under our control so that we can use them in the immediate future. That is, unless any of you have any objections.
I don't.
I have a question.
Certainly, ask away.
I'll whisper it, quietly because I don't want to upset one of the wardens. One of the wardens looks a bit familiar. We went to a strange plane during our journeys, and we met a creature with powerful psychic ability named Oromov, who was able to project us into another dimension entirely.
I think you're getting a little confused. Those are the Grand Council members.
Yes,
So
is
just
he perhaps from the same place? Does he know him? I mean, he looks kind of the same. I'm sure he knows him.
so the
Wait,
the
who are
eye.
we talking about?
I presume you mean the eye guy, right?
Yeah, Fane's jumping to giant leaps of logic here, and he's
Are
probably
you
incorrect.
referring
but...
to what was he called, like Omuv or something?
Was it Omov?
Yeah,
I think
Omov, that
Is
was it.
Oromov actually a name? Where have you got that one from? Oromov. I don't know.
No,
Omov,
it's similar.
yes.
So Omuv was the portalmancer who you found during your trials with the insects and who ostensibly was going to send you to the next place, but instead seems to have attempted to sacrifice you to something within the warp.
Was
I'm
he
sure it was a
not the guy
minor
who
mistake.
was lots of guys, or was that someone else?
So the eye guy turns all of his eyes to you, being with Fayan, which is a rather disconcerting sight. And and it says,
Little racist, don't you think?
Well,
I think all of us eye
you got
guys look the
old.
same.
well, I don't know. I mean,
I mean, as it happens, he is my twin brother, but still, that's quite the assumption to jump to.
I don't know. It just seems that everybody we meet seems to know everybody else. It's kind of a small world we live in, all things considered.
Yes, well, we don't get along so much anymore on
Oh.
account of how he turned evil and everything.
Oh, did he? Oh dear.
well, you know,
I don't know how that could have happened.
every
Every family has a black sheep.
Yep.
Now that's just insensitive.
Okay, every family has an evil sheep.
anyway, so yeah, basically you've been promoted to wardens, which is not the same as these Grand Council members, but it's, I guess you might say it's something like fighting generals, like Princess Leia style generals.
So we have a team of Princess Leia's.
Some-
Is that how I understand it?
I have a plan. Into the garbage chute.
Well, she never got shot. She never lost a fight.
Yep.
Yeah. So basically, so having said that and received your promotion, the council starts to show you through the beacons on the map. So basically, one of them is situated on a mountain range, which is kind of... Oh, so let's say there's also a mark far in the east, which represents basically the site of the graveyard and apparently the site where the invasion is kind of warping through at. So that's far over on the east. And just to repeat, you guys are over basically on the kind of middle of the west coast, more or less. In between those two places is marked a large, tall mountain range. Not the same place where Mother Mountain was, but further in the middle. One of the beacons is situated there, and they explain to you that located within that mountain range is a battery of powerful defensive weapons, which was left here by a civilization long since passed. In order to activate them, you will need to find the command and control center, restore the power, and somehow take command of it. And that will hopefully be able to provide a powerful barrage which will screen, well, perhaps all of the fleet. We are not entirely sure of its power. By the way, we are assuming that it is quite powerful, but this is something you will have to ascertain if and when you are able to reach it. He then, let's say he has a big, long, like laser stick with which to point with, and he directs that over to a up to the north where the land becomes icy and frozen, and he let's see. He points it basically towards. It's kind of like a large crater, which looks to be at least several miles across, but which is filled with a big sweeping of kind of debris and rocks and things. So the crater itself is partially buried. It's also surrounded by fairly high hilly mountains, and there seem to be the ruins of several large, very large and grand, but mostly destroyed cities in the vicinity of there as well. Jaina says, "They're asleep." Pardon me. Hold on. Give me a sec. I'm going to drink some water. He says, "There rests the, hopefully sleeping, but possibly dead Titan, which found its way onto this planet a long time past and caused a great deal of trouble for one of the past civilizations. Specifically, it was the 7th epoch. However, it seems that it was subdued and buried within that crater. We believe it to be the single most powerful being that exists on this planet, that we have some hope of being able to cajole or control. It seems, in short, to have been by manner of some sort of golem. At least we hope that, and we hope that it doesn't, when you wake it up, turn out to be some kind of angry ruffian who wants to cause trouble. Further, he directs his stick towards. Let's say it is let's say it's towards the representation of Greatest Grandkirk. He says, in these very archives, we have a certain item which you might think of as a sort of a distress beacon. We believe that when activated, if we can find a way to do so, that it will contact a certain entity, you might say, who exists in outer terrestrial space. If we have legends and records, although they are very ancient, of this being coming to the aid of this planet in times past, because it was born here. And we feel that if we can contact it using this beacon, we may be able to negotiate it to also lend us a hand in this urgent matter. He kind of coughs and like ruffles his papers and stuff that he's reading his notes off, and points to a different location, which is down in the south, and it's kind of out in the deserts, basically. He continues. What other means we are able to unlock? Hoping that is assuming we are unable to unlock any others of them. These lands have not inconsiderable armed forces. Some of them with the capability, through sheer numbers, if nothing else, to hopefully provide defense and perhaps just as a last line. But nevertheless, if we can find some way to bolster their power and destructive capability, ideally in a way using means that we can then deactivate or take back afterwards, this would greatly increase our security. To this end, we have located essentially an armory of ancient war machines and technology which we can distribute to our troops. However, it is locked, and so far we have not found a way to get into it, besides which there's not really been any need to unleash such technology until a juncture such as this. Finally, and he points to a... let's see. Okay, so it's an area out in the far outlands, near the edge, in fact, of the Iron Wastes, the Great Barren Desert, which demarks the east stretch of known territory. And there is, let's see, there's basically a kind of area of rolling valleys and hills and stuff, which seems to have been... It kind of looks like farmland, I guess you might say, in the sense that it's kind of split up into lots of little irregularly shaped areas. And on one side of it, there is a great scar across the landscape, which seems to have been cut by some great force. But among the fields and stuff, you can basically see, it's kind of hard to describe. It's not exactly like a city, but it's kind of like okay, think of it like this: a network of canals and of large canals and things, which stretches across a great area and is very complicated in the way it or interweaves with itself, and only along the kind of banks or edges of those canals is what you might call a great distributed city with lots of structures and buildings and
Sort
things.
of built into the canal wall.
Yeah, exactly, and into and along the walls, but there is none of such building in the areas between the canals. Anyway, having pointed that out, Jaina says,
Finally, we have what you might call the what we hope will be at most a final fallback option. This is a certain device we are aware of, which, and this is rather dangerous, I have to say. It is something which has the capability, potentially, to rewrite causality and to undo what has been done in the past. Possibly we can use some way, especially if things go wrong and we have no other choice, to find some point in this whole turn of events, either recent or going back into the distant past, that we can change in order to improve our situation. Now that I have explained all of these assets to which we have access to, I must point out that we have merely 3 days in which to secure as much of these as we can. So you are going to have to work very quickly. And I think probably you will only be able to choose 3 of them on which to focus, unless you can find some means to achieve your task very quickly and then move on to further ones, which would bring us an even greater advantage. So I will quickly review again these assets. We have the defense barrage in the mountain. We have the sleeping titan in the crater to the north. We have the beacon for ultra-terrestrials kept here in this cathedral. We have the armory in the desert, and we have the causal splitter out far to the east. So now I have described all these. Do you have any questions?
Yes. You say the beacon. Do we know how long it will take this creature to arrive?
It is not entirely certain because none of us here in this council have experience of using it or dealing with this entity. We only know it by records that are kept in the furthest archives of this place and the most vague. So, as with all of these options, well, I should explain it is always a danger to be activating such powerful completely lost what I was thinking of. To activate such items, it's because the power that they wield is never fully understood, and its consequences could always be unpredictable.
You mentioned this time splitter as well. Do you know exactly how that works? Does it cut off a section at a time? Do we have to go back and change a thing? Because
it's not exactly clear because even with all our knowledge, it is still impossible for us to ascertain whether the nature of time adjustment, you might say, fits into a framework of multi-universality, or whether there is a single consistent timeline which will be in some way warped or changed. So we can only hope that this will provide us with some means to find a point in the past and to change something which will allow us either to change the current timeline or to transfer our world into a new one.
I was thinking if we went back and just knocked off Russell before he got a signal off, that would solve things, wouldn't it?
Something like that is a possibility, yes. However, I would encourage us to treat that one as our last resort because it is simply so very dangerous. Also, it is quite exciting.
I think I've missed one from the list. There's a gun battery, sleeping titan, a beacon,
Yeah.
the armory, the
Yeah.
time splitter. I think there was another one, wasn't there?
No, that is the full 5.
Full 5. Okay.
Well,
You will, of course, have access to all of the resources that we can make available to you. However, we are already using many of our other staffs to complete other tasks and preparations. So we will be relying on you to achieve these particular tasks.
What about travel? What would be the fastest way for us to
Uh,
travel to these things?
You can leave that to us at the time. We will be able to get you to these places without too much trouble.
Okay.
How long would it take to travel to one? You say you have 3 days. Are you looking at half a day's travel there, half a day's travel back?
We believe that. Let's see. That's a good question. The process of preparing to warp you to different locations will take several hours each time that you do it.
Can you walk us straight from one location to another? I mean, can we save a bit of time by not coming back here first, maybe? Maybe get to 4 instead of 5?
Yeah,
3?
we have the means to do it.
What does everyone else think? I mean,
Sorry,
I'm favouring the giant dudes personally. This Titan and the beacons of the other giant friendly person. May or may not be Pluto. I'm not sure. Yeah, I am just letting my mind wander with that one.
Yeah, that
Giant
sounds
dudes have
pretty
helped
cool.
us well in the past.
What,
so,
sorry?
Yeah.
We've also killed our fair share.
Well, yes. So if they turn against us, we have a fight chance. So, yeah. I don't know.
So
I mean,
just to recap, what are our options here?
guns.
Okay,
Going for
hold on.
giant dudes and like beacons and things, and
Yeah, let me just.
Yeah.
The armory, which is the key is lost for.
and then
Well,
we've
yes.
got like time travel.
Yeah.
Yeah, I like the time travel one. I mean, it would be a last ditch effort, but that might potentially solve our problem if is it like a last ditch. Okay, things are getting screwed up.
How about
option.
if we do manage to do this quickly, we make this like the fourth thing we try and get to?
Well, which would be one we miss? I mean, the
Well-
armory. I mean, Minim can probably get into the armory, but I don't know. You can't. How can you move other people? Can Minim
Yeah,
move
well,
other people?
like 2 of us can teleport now.
I would imagine
Right.
that there'd be something weird going on that wouldn't allow you into the armory if it's that hard to get into.
Got all kinds of teleporting and walking through walls.
Okay.
That is
So-
We
true.
can teleport to other planets now.
What?
Wow. Okay. So if you go to the armory, get massive explosives, you could always drop it off on the fleet as it comes here.
Well, I mean, you know,
You
me and a
probably
few
would.
people.
Okay. Okay. How exhausting is it to take somebody with you when you teleport? Could you perhaps
So to
say?
take 3 people with you, it's a 11 int maneuver.
And you've got a lot of edge, but
Yes.
still that knocks it down. So it's 6. This doesn't sound terrible. It's possible. It's plausible you could get everybody inside the armory, but we would
Yeah.
still need to find a way out again.
Maybe it unlocks just on a latch.
Maybe it's an automatic door.
Yeah.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Maybe we just need to find.
People haven't thought to walk up to it yet.
Yeah. It's like, well, we don't have a key, so why would
Oh,
you?
that's big.
Right. I mean, to be honest, if we go
Yeah.
to the Sleeping Titan first, we can always take him with us to open the door for us.
That's a good point.
I
Do we
like
know
that. I like that thinking.
what do we know about the armory? Can we ask Magic Brian, because I keep forgetting the name.
Jaina.
Jaina.
The armory. Well, based on how much you enjoyed the Space Mobile, I think you will enjoy it a lot. It simply put, it is as it is described. It simply was an armory for a past civilization. However, it seems that besides their own technologies, they also recovered various of the other technologies that was buried and otherwise available to them. So there is a good variety. Let's see. In scale, it is. I think it is about 20 miles across, and it is chock full of very destructive machinery. So I think you will have fun in there.
And then
Wouldn't we
there
need,
was. Oh, sorry, carry on.
Wouldn't we need an army to use the armory? I imagine it's not that useful just by ourselves. I mean, we get some cool weapons out of it, but
Yeah.
For the moment, it will be sufficient to gain access to it in such a way that we can retrieve the items using our troops. So we will take care of getting the army there and all of that. But we need the place to be, first of all, opened, and secondly, made safe for us.
Okay, so it sounds like we're all pretty keen on the Titan. Or are
Also,
Sounds cool.
who's this like extra-dimensional hero?
Who do you mean?
we? The ultra-terrestrial beacon?
Yeah.
Oh, right. Sorry. Yeah. So let's see. Let's say Omov's twin explains about him. Let's see. Basically, I'm trying.
Is
to
it
think.
something you'd rather keep secret until it happens?
Yeah,
or-
I'm going to say actually not too much is really known beyond the fact that it's a powerful being which exists in the ultra-terrestrial plane and which has some kind of investment in this planet and in the past has defended it.
I mean, they've got a track record.
Well, we found that Omar is apparently the evil twin. Could he perhaps be one of 3 triplets instead? And that's sort of pure good, the legendary hero come to save the day.
Racist.
Well, I don't know. Yeah. Is it not? So you don't have a third brother then?
Or you're just
The
digging a
third
hole.
Umar brother.
I do not.
Okay. I thought we were getting some like Chris Claremont X-Men stuff here with the legendary third brother. But fair enough.
Oh gosh, no.
Okay. Okay, so which one? Okay, so we're not going to be able to do all 5. So which one of
No.
these do we least like? Because they all sound kind of cool.
They do. Mountain Bridge sounds very helpful.
Yeah.
Sleeping Titan sounds a bit risky, but probably the most awesome.
I might
if
have
it
missed
works.
something about Sleeping Titan. I think it melded together with the Ultra-Terrestrial in my mind. What was risky about it?
The Sleeping Titan, they weren't sure if we could control the Titan
Right, okay.
because it caused a lot of problems back in like the seventh world.
Yes, he might be a rowdy ruffian who wants to cause trouble.
So shall we pass on that one unless we somehow have time for all 5?
Yeah.
That's the only one that could be risky.
Well, as you pointed out, the Titan could be quite useful in achieving the other ones.
There is that as
Uh,
well.
That would be. And can we point
I
the
think,
mountain barrage at the armory and just blow the doors off? Would that be a bit?
They're not that close together, no. I
Right,
mean,
okay.
the map that you're looking at is the entire continent, which is, I think, at least as big as Eurasia. So,
Right.
Okay.
So we're ditching time travel for now.
Yeah, it would be a good last-ditch thing if everything
Nothing
else
ever
fails.
ends
I mean, I think based on what we've always, based on the past experience, it's always good to have a plan B. Although in this place, our plan B can't just be blow it all up because we are where we would blow up. So that would end badly. I'd really like the time travel one. I mean, if we got the Sleeping Titan, if he can batter down the desert army, I mean, I don't know where else we'd find a key for the armory if it's been lost. Unless Stason Jason just has it in his pocket or something, and it turns out to be his personal armory from ages past. That's not going to be.
oh, that is the kind of thing he does.
It wouldn't surprise me.
But not something we can rely on, I fear.
How big is the army that would make use of the armory? How many people?
It's basically the entire armed forces of the Safe Reaches, so big army.
Right. That would be useful.
Sounds very practical. Plus,
Yeah.
we'd get some cool stuff for
It
ourselves.
sounds very locked.
It does. If we can get inside it, though, that would be.
Well,
the
that's
best
kind
choice
of
to go to.
Minim's thing.
Yeah.
So
You
yeah,
go
it
there
could be good.
I'm thinking
Just
to go-
repeat, I mean, you have to get inside, but you also have to, open it, basically,
Yeah.
for other people
Yeah.
to get in.
But you figure, like, if there's like really heavy ordnance inside, getting out's not going to be too much of a problem.
Depends what the door's like. Like, what if it's actually the mountain itself?
It's
Then
made
again,
of bombs.
I'm sure we could blow up a side of the mountain. potentially. If you can't do that, we're not going to do much against the spaceship.
I'll bring a shovel.
All right.
Of course, I'll look a mountain expert. Dream big.
All right, several of the Grand Council, as you are discussing amongst themselves, some of them are kind of offering advice or observing. Some of them seem to snigger slightly at some of your suggestions. But we have reached break time. So for now, let's take a 10-minute, or let's say 12-minute break. So we'll be back at 25 past. And have a little think about your options, and in the second half you can start to put together a more specific plan and maybe even head out to the first location.
Okay.
Alright, sounds good.
Yeah.
Cool.
Time out.
Stap in the stream.